Good afternoon to you. Here is the update on transport in the time of COVID-19, 15th of September. I think that may not be last week's presentation. Okay, don't forget to email me if you want more info, some links or slides, and to also send me information which I might not have seen on Twitter. Okay, here are the various bits of news. CBI is talking about the number of days, working days lost due to poor air quality, and they don't say they don't like it. I don't know what they're going to do about it though. Right, now this is an important one. The UK Climate Assembly, which is a citizen-based action, which you should know about, their discussion on transport said that they wanted to be involved in minimising restrictions on travel and lifestyles, placing the emphasis on shifting to electric vehicles, with just a 2 to 5% cut in car use in a decade, which is really not good enough. So that was something of a disappointment. There's something from the Nudge Unit trying to bribe motorists to take up electric vehicles rather than petrol ones. I'm not a big fan of nudging. Today there was something in The Guardian based on Waze data about congestion levels being up with regard to 2019 levels in outer London, not inner London, and certainly not central London, but some figures showing, particularly on the first day back to school, levels of congestion up. It looks like there is going to be a significant congestion issue in most cities, and I think we maybe need to talk about that. There are some good sides to congestion for active travel, I should say. There will be a trial of a 60-mile-an-hour limit to reduce emissions problems on some motorways, just going down to 60 miles an hour, nothing very dramatically exciting. There's quite a neat little section on BBC London News about school streets, saying they're basically a good thing, so you can take a look at that. Yes, an article on electric cars in a scientific journal. The results show a massive replacement of oil-fueled individual vehicles to electric ones alone cannot deliver the reductions in greenhouse gas emissions which are required for climate stabilization. That's the piece, and it says you have to follow the degrowth paradigm with a drastic reduction in total private transportation. I think they mean motor transportation because cycling is private transportation. And while we're on electric cars, don't forget my brief article there talking about what's wrong with them. Okay, now this got a lot of news on Twitter. Superintendent Brighton of Westminster Police said that Operation Close Pass won't be taking place because officer safety is my priority and I can't put officers at risk, sorry. So that was followed by a quite fantastic pile-on saying, you know, are you telling us that you don't want to police, that we don't count, that it's not safe for your officers, but it's safe for us? What are you telling us? This is intolerable. So there was a result from that in that the next day, Westminster Police replied in a tweet to the all-party parliamentary group for cycling and walking, saying, yes, we are going to do it. So there has been a retraction. That's very good news. It shows the power of a Twitter pylon. Having said that, don't forget Road Danger Reduction Forum's been Secretariat for West Midlands Police Road Harm Prevention Team, and we've been publicising close passing since 2016, when we gave an award to West Midlands Police for doing it, for starting it. We've been doing training days, we've been doing updates on which police services are doing it, which ones aren't. And I sent a very polite tweet to Superintendent Brighton saying, here's the risk assessment form done by West Midlands Police. There are police services that do it, like the Met Police's cycle safety team. And in fact, most police services in the UK have shown interest in it, and most of them have done some kind of it. Now, in fact, most of it is pretty much token, I should say. And that's because there's very little in the way of traffic policing in this country. There never really was, but it was cut by Theresa May even further. So there's very little, and that's one of the reasons why there is very little policing of close passing in this country, and we need to desperately rack it up. But anyway, something of a result from the Twitter pylon. Okay, campaigning on low traffic neighborhoods. Now, I do strongly suggest that you follow tweeters like Danny Williams and Paul Gannon. I said that last week. Still do that, particularly in London, keeping abreast of developments, what kind of people are getting involved in the campaigns and so on. And here's just a bit of work done by the people in Lambeth. They responded to something in the Daily Hate Mail saying that the low traffic neighborhood had stopped fire engines getting through and blah, 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 blah. In fact, that wasn't the case. Actually, emergency services have been quite supportive of low traffic neighborhoods, but well done Lambeth cyclists for their debunk. And do get on the case, those of you who are campaigning on low traffic neighborhoods. Right, another good bit of data. This is based on the official government statistics, and this shows a 36% increase in motorists using residential streets as cut-throughs in the last 25 years. That's these urban minor roads, increase of 36% from 95 to 2019. So that's a bit of data. There are also figures that you can look up quite easily on the increase in motor traffic. So when anybody says, oh, this congestion is caused by cycle lanes, no, it isn't. There's the diversity page. I just picked something. I'm just doing the new things. From the Sustrans report, 31% of people with disabilities who haven't cycled would like to give it a go. And don't forget, this report is being new diversity in cycling. Those are the only new bits. Okay, on to the delay slide, and it's still delayed, now 5.5 months since lockdown. And here is my quote again from Alex Ingram. It's the 3rd week running, and although Alex says things that should be read, I shouldn't have to put that up 3 weeks in a row. Where is the remaining 80% of the emergency active travel fund? We were told it would be early September. Well, we have 1 day to go before that's not true. Okay, let's look at what's been going on the ground in the UK. As usual, it all depends where you live. Bournemouth, Andy is going to tell us his experiences as a councillor there, what's happening. Sutton Coldfield seems to be some interesting good stuff going on in there. Brighton, though, is the Labour group opposing cycle lanes. Do go to Bicycle's website to see what's happening and if you can help. Ipswich, this isn't actually emergency active travel fund, but it's just an illustration of Kesgrave High School where pushing nearly half of the kids cycle to school. Trafford, the A56 bike lanes have been upgraded, and my contact says the good thing is that the sections that are remaining are being upgraded from cones to something better. The bad thing is that 2 sections are being removed, so the pop-up bike lane continues to shrink, making the route more difficult to use. Not good. And I refer you to the Mark Treasure thesis, as I have called it, that the differences between pro and anti-active travel highway authorities is accelerating rapidly. Some places where the councillors get it are going to get better, and places where they don't will be left behind, and the gap will be more evident. Okay, here's a thread, because most things that go in are not uniformly good or bad. There are bits and pieces either way. So Liverpool, here's Phil Marshall's photographs and comments on the 3rd pop-up bike lane. This is Commercial Road, and he's saying some of the infrastructure on the route is good, some bad. I do like, just a personal thing here, I do like the mandatory line being further out from the old mandatory or advisory lane, beg your pardon. That does make a significant difference for me. Glasgow, I saw something and I thought, well, that's not really that impressive, a short stretch of Kelvin Wave to access the Kelvin Grove Art Gallery. In fact, I noticed that it was a bi-directional lane, which didn't seem to be easy to enter and exit. And someone called Wavy Davy on Twitter says, "You have got to be kidding. I'm not using a Glasgow accent, you'll be pleased to know. You pick the easiest, lowest hanging fruit to close to cars and then open half of it again after 4 months. So not a happy customer there." Right, now here's an important graphic that went out. This is from Adam Reynolds. He's been campaigning for low traffic neighbourhoods, but he's saying that the very clever thing is bringing in the residents' parking screens and EV charging into the mix to create a holistic approach. And I won't read through this graphic, but it shows the processes to deliver a livable neighborhood. And someone has said, is an equalities impact assessment missing? I don't know, but read through that, get in touch with Adam Reynolds if you want to know more. Okay, we're back to London. Here's some figures from Waltham Forest you always hear about. 30 kilometres segregated cycle track, 51 modal 50 filters, 31 pocket parks, 7 station hubs and 500 cycle hangars. And they say that last year 900 parking spaces were taken out and 465 spaces so far in 2020. Those are figures that I find very dramatic. Car ownership in the borough has declined to about 50% of households and nearer to 40% in some wards. There's the link. Lambeth, the activists went out and did a survey for the Relton low traffic neighbourhood and got positive responses there. So, you know, do remember you have to keep up the pressure and get people saying, oh, how good it is and wonderful, and keep on saying thank you to the council and so on and so on. Okay, now this is what you will all know about Wandsworth. And they tweeted, following feedback, we have decided to urgently review low traffic neighbourhoods that were imposed upon the council by TfL. They didn't actually urgently review, they took them out. Now, note that imposed upon the council. Here I've just decided to let them know that on 9th of May, fast-tracked statutory guidance will tell councils to reallocate road space for significantly increased numbers of cyclists and pedestrians. This is the government, a Conservative government, which is telling councils on the 9th of May. So they were told by a Conservative government, then they applied for money from TfL with conditions specified by the government on 27th of May. And one of the things that APP's GCW pointed out is that they, on July the 1st, said that Wandsworth hadn't received 100% of their allocation and apologised. And Wandsworth Council said, quite a few people commented on this erroneous tweet, hopefully they didn't miss the correction. So on July the 2nd, they were very proud that they'd got their 100% allocation of money they had applied for. Okay, more on this. Will Norman sent a tweet because Peter Graham from the council said, we tried to mitigate for the blockages. Sadly, the LTNs aren't working. Sadiq Khan needs to suspend the cycle lanes. And Will Norman said, you might want to talk to your team about this because we worked with them on all the A24 changes and they agreed raising no objections. And the LTNs were put in without liaising with us. So, you know, let's correct these things. And another bit of background from one of the councillors comes in a minute. Again, referring to what the leader said, we've been collecting data throughout the trials as well as loading with the emergency services. And we ran a word survey and received a lot of feedback. So Last Not Lost, who's a tweeter who you should look at. For those considering FOI requests, this councillor confirms there is a rich seam of traffic data analysis corresponds with blue light services and residents that can be obtained from the council. So when someone says that, chase them up on it. And he's saying, if you're good at crafting requests, ask how much funding was requested, who signed off the plans, what were imposed, etc., etc. Don't forget the key workers in St George's Hospital who wrote a petition to Wandsworth Council asking for safer cycle routes, or the questions put in a very illuminating thread from Tooting Healthy Streets. And here is that councillor Joe Rigby, opposition, pointing out in 1978 the whole of Tooting, including Upper Tooting Road, became one large LTN. There'd been months of consultation and meetings, and the Tories took it out after 6 weeks. Also, Last Not Lost shows how when the superhighway cycle lanes went in, they did not cause any congestion. The congestion was there already and cars were parked in them. And look at the date, September 2018. So there are a lot of people out there with a lot of background data which can be used to fillet the statements of people doing the wrong thing. Because this really was the low traffic neighbourhood piece of news this week. Here are all the things that you can use to question the councillor who rode back on it. Okay, so Camden, some good things. These schemes are going in or underway. A lot of stuff happening there. Kingston, oh, the pop-up cycle lanes were removed from Kingston Bridge. You may remember me talking about how they went in and how good they were. I haven't heard anything more about why that happened, but the bike hub at the station is going in. That looks quite good. Kensington Chelsea, as you've already heard, the pop-up cycle lanes are going in on the 28th. That's the actual lanes with wands or cylinders, and the junctions are to be treated by the winter. The junctions, of course, are the dodgy bits and the bits that count. I do not know when winter is. Keep an eye on Kensington Chelsea. Hackney, I mentioned Middleton Road last week with this quote, and as Brian said, you can find out about the background there and how filtered permeability from 2001 was associated with halving car trips and doubling cycling trips. That's the reference for you. And there's a bus gate gone in on the Cat and Mutton Bridge. Different impressions from different people about whether it's worked or not. Some people saying, oh, it's great, you know, no motor vehicles going through. Other people saying, well, yes, they still are. So I don't know. That's why I put in question marks. Anybody with a nice assessment of that, do get back to me. Hammersmith Bridge, you know the story. Central government has now got involved. We do hope that they will simply put up a pedestrian cycle crossing and not sort of rebuild a whole motor traffic bridge. Very nice set of tweets from Adam Tranter, the cycling mayor of Coventry, talks about cycling with his cargo bike and his kid in Coventry, getting the train to London, riding around London and going back home, and talking about the different kinds of experiences he gets. Quite nice and succinct. You may want to look at that. A set of tweets from Councillor Rathbone in Lewisham about the Lewisham and Lee Green low traffic neighbourhood, which is very big. And he says something nice. He says, change is painful and difficult. It is also necessary. So, you know, nice to see a councillor in a local authority putting forward measures like this and saying, yeah, okay, it's going to be tough for some people, but we got to do it. There's Dulwich College, lots of kids riding bikes to school, 400 plus bike parking spaces in use. Shows that the rich kids get the best stuff. Yes. Campaigns and reading, etc. There's your spreadsheet on recent low traffic interventions. The evidence on low traffic neighbourhoods from Rachel Aldred. Government stats on traffic growth. These are new stats at that link. I mentioned the banning SUV ads before. A video of Callum of with the LCC and what's happening in London. Transport for Quality of Life, 2 pages. They're not new anymore. Don't forget, we're still fighting against the 27 or 30 or 35 billion pound road building programme. Here's the Cycling UK's response to the decarbonisation consultation. Brian on low traffic neighbourhood network planning, the survey on new e-bike users, how to do LTN community engagement. And that's basically it. Phil Goodwin stuff, navigation apps, and on OpenStreetMap, you can see various things. Same old consultations. The biggie is the highway code review. I was on a sort of group representative focus group with Department for Transport earlier this week. 1 or 2 Neanderthals opposing the new hierarchy, but most people going along with it at least. That's good. There are some problems about, for those of you who are club cyclists who like going out in groups on the road, about the wording. Telling motorists to expect people to ride 2 abreast. That is being changed, I think, but do make comments about that when you make your submission to the Highway Code. You can also add on things which aren't explicitly asked about with regard to high-vis and helmets. So that has to be done by October the 27th. I'll tell you more about that close to the time, but this is absolutely key document to respond to. Also do respond to spending review, telling them not to spend money on motorways and spend it on active travel. A nice video here. You should know who Bike Stormz are. Groups of generally about 14-year-old boys who like popping wheelies in big groups. They have this sort of knives down, bikes up thing. And there's Pedal Me App with one guy on the back here, you can't actually see in a trailer, videoing these guys, and another guy on the front also using video. So there's Pedal Me App, who are a splendid organisation who you should know about. And a bit of subversive car ads. That's a nice one after Hieronymus Bosch, Destination Climate Chaos, very artistic, and Driving Kills. And that's your lot for today.
So yeah, I got in the right mood for this today. I was kind of feeling a bit nice and didn't do it last week. So let's tighten up. There we go. But yeah. Oh, why's that gone there? There we go. We can look at that. So I was looking at road safety audit comments today, and I had like a kind of holy trinity of terrible comments. One was about using guardrail to guide pedestrians to the most appropriate place to cross. That's kind of, all right, okay, keep calm, Brian. The next one involved like setting back a pedestrian side road entry treatment, so it wasn't at the side road, it was like a way back in there because there was a risk of crossing on your desire line. So again, putting the crossing where people don't cross, that was the second one that came in. And the third one, which was a new one on me, but like it got my goat somewhat as well, was like there was a cycle symbol placed central in the lane, something that bikeability people on this call will probably defend more than sticking it in the gutter. And the comment was that drivers might be confused and think that the lane was a cycle lane. And I use it, and I was trying for a good 10 minutes. Yeah.
Right, can I just stop you? I think you may be sharing the wrong screen, the wrong window.
Oh, am I? Sorry. Yeah, something weird has happened there. Hold on. Sharing. Okay, let's do this. How was that? Is that better?
Yes.
Yeah, we're in. Sorry, yeah, thanks. So yeah, I was trying to ascertain what the injury risk was of a car, not thinking that a lane of traffic was for them. But anyway, it was a comment that came over today. So I had the three of them. I thought I'm now in the right mood to be all critical. Normally, as a rule in life, I try to stick with the positives, particularly on Twitter, because you can easily spiral on there. But I thought I'd pick up some road safety audit comments. So what I'm going to look at in the next 10-15 minutes to try and get us all going for a nice debate again, because I really enjoyed last week's debate. So when road safety audits go wrong for vulnerable road users, and I've quite cheekily said everything that's wrong with that sentence in there. So when road, really we're talking about streets, they've got different character and there's different functions to them other than shifting cars. Really, when we're talking about safety, we're really talking about danger and road danger. And obviously we just heard from Bob, who's the man who's made that front and center in road safety, road danger reduction policy. And when we're talking about audits, is it really an audit? Is it a quality audit? Is it an audit at all? Or is it a series of checklists? And when they go wrong, is it that people are just following standards? Now, Kate definitely touched on this a lot last week. So following standards in the UK, when all the standards are based around shifting cars and not thinking about much else, means that they go wrong. And then for vulnerable, and that term, again, Bob's been unpicking that, and I will as well, is unprotected is the kind of European one. I was kind of suggesting active, and car drivers being inactive would be a really simple way of getting the health message across. And then road again, and then users. It's all really, we're talking about people here. We're talking about people that are potentially losing their lives and the whole thing. And it is difficult to do road safety audits and not depersonalize things, because these are upsetting things when you're reading coroner's inquests and trying to figure out what happened on street like a detective. It's bleak stuff. So people want to talk about peds. They want to talk about cyclists and want to talk about cars, and everything's all gets a little bit theoretical. For me, that's not particularly helpful. I think you have to think of the human cost of these things. So let's do that. A little bit on this presentation. I first gave this to a whole bunch of police officers in Greater Manchester and road safety audit people. So I was being kind of deliberately provocative, but I kind of had to prove my credentials to start with. And really, as I said, I was a road safety audit officer. I still am. I'd have to start doing them again for another couple of years to be able to write one. But I was trained in this stuff. and I have done them. And all the examples I'm using, all the text examples, are from real audits. So I have got my hands on one. These are all real things that real people have said, but I've taken out any reference to any street names, just so there's no pointing the finger at anybody. It's just I'm trying to point out general issues as I see them with the process and the way it's applied. Maybe people have sunk into habits that we need to kind of bolt them out of. A little bit more of my credentials. I feel I have to prove them in this area. There are 3 reports that are written on road safety. I've done quite a bit of work with the European Transport Safety Council. Will they still need me now that I'm English? Who knows? But definitely like working with them to do some great stuff. And I think that's my big contribution to the area. Well worth reading those reports if you're into that sort of thing. So let's get into the comments. And I've kind of given them kind of pithy headings to kind of unpick what I feel is like an overall issue. So really, is it just about cars and signs? The picture there is deliberately provocative, and it's kind of like the first issue that everything seems to be from the driver's perspective. They have got better over the years at looking at pedestrian perspective, but I've yet to see a road safety audit that even considers a cycling perspective and the different needs of that user. So that's an issue. And you can see the person in that car there, that the world's just streaming past them. They might see the odd sign, they might see the odd light, but the rest of it is a blur. And that's not a particularly helpful way of approaching the street. So let's read one of these comments. There's going to be a fair bit of reading in this. So there is a slight risk of tail-end collisions if right turns cannot be made into X approach due to southbound traffic queuing at the signals. Again, it's quite a lot of detail just on a car one, and this tail-end collisions is one that I see come up again and again and again, like it's the worst thing that could ever happen in safety terms. It's not like I never see risk of child being crushed running across the road to the ice cream van. I don't see that. Much more likely to happen than these rear tail one. And really what you're talking about is like insurance jobs. So anyway, my first point is that it does seem to be somewhat from the driver's perspective. And to give a little bit of like a clarity on that, I was asked when I started working up in Greater Manchester and going up there, what was the difference between working there and London? And I was like, it was the perspective that people recall the streets. And I'll just explain. So I speak to someone in London and I go, well, what's that street like? They're looking at it from a pedestrian perspective and they go, oh yeah, it's okay to actually, it's quite difficult again and go across that crossing because everybody kind of walks. Everybody walks and gets the tube. That's the perspective on it. When I ask someone in Greater Manchester, anybody working in the industry, what's that street like? They go, oh yeah, no, it's really good. And what do you mean? And really, you unpack it, and it really means it's not congested and you can fly straight through there in your car. That's what good means. There are 2 very different perspectives. So for me, that's one of the big issues I'd like to raise for the whole field. You need to have different perspectives. Obvious but true. When I see so many of them, it's just driver's perspective. You need a sign there. I'm really saying you need a sign there so a driver can interpret the environment at speed. Not that it's going to do anything for actual road safety. Anyway, so this assumption that drivers are important, they're going to go fast, everybody else needs to come out of the way, that we've got to drag that out, but we're going to make active travel work. All right, that's number 1. It really, really, really gets my goat as a design engineer when the road safety auditor becomes the designer and gives like instructions. Let's read this one. Summary: proposed zebra too close to the giveaway line. Says who? And the proposed zebra crossing on X Street will be immediately adjacent to the giveaway line. Hence, drivers will have to obstruct the crossing while waiting for a gap in the traffic to enter. Okay, we're going through this a lot on side road zebras. Or well, the car will be giving way to the road, it'll block the zebra. Yeah, but the next one might well stop and let someone cross the road where they want to actually cross. Recommendation: a zebra crossing on X Street should be set back a short distance from the junction. So like that should's not like as strong as a must, but it's quite hard to overcome a good should in like a traffic engineering. The word should and must strike fear into us. It's like who's going to be bold enough to go against a should? You go like, well, I don't think it should. Like, oh yeah, but the road safety orders said it should. If you go against that, then that's on you now. You're putting someone at a risk. Yeah, but I'll put the pedestrian crossing where everybody crosses. Yeah, but these are the kind of problems. As soon as they start like stipulating a distance and saying, and all the language, they're too close and they should, for me, it's so value laden and it doesn't stack up with what road safety analysis says. And I'm like, it annoys me. See question 1 on driver's perspective. So anyway, if you're going to become the designer, then we need to train road safety auditors in CDM. You've got designers' responsibility, and designers have got to stay firm, get those responses in and go, no, I'm sorry, that's where everybody's crossing. It's got to be there. Get out of my face. No consideration for vulnerable road users at all. I've kind of shown a scheme there, which is an interesting one. Let's have a look at what this one says. So the audit team recommend that traffic modelling is undertaken to ensure that the proposed roundabout layout performs effectively, allowing traffic to pass through each arm of the junction without creating congestion problems. Now this kind of gets my goat as well. And I can see Kate, I've got a little picture up in the corner, so I get my little checks in here. Like, no way is that a road safety consideration. If everything's congested, that's usually a safer environment. So to talk about making it fast flow and to say that you need modelling to make sure that cars can go through smoothly and quickly is way outside of the audit brief and just all hints at the real issue, keeping cars going and keeping everybody else out of the way. Not good. It's real. I remember having to take a picture in, I will mention it, in Barnet, like across a bit of Taylor End, but back before I worked for them. And it was like of a lady with a pram sprinting across 6 lanes of traffic because there was no indication, there was no gap in the traffic there. And I'm going, you've got to put a crossing in there. You've got to do it. Look at this lady. You've got houses there. You've got the school there. Like, but the impact it'll have on the network, I'm like, oh, please. That's the case that you'd like road safety audits to make, not please pull out that pedestrian crossing because you're going to congest traffic. Anyway, gets my goat a bit. The kind of Everyday Equality Act fails. That's what I kind of see. Why aren't people picking up pavement parking? Why isn't that like just on every single road safety audit that you ever see? If you go outside of London in particular, it's on every single street that you seem to come across, and it's a massive safety issue, and it's never picked up. And let's read this comment. Ensure the cycle track can only be accessed by cyclists, and when necessary, emergency vehicles. So this is the tricky first one. This is the kind of comment that leads people to make it really narrow. And then, okay, will a side-by-side bike get through there? Will a hand bike be able to get through there? So, you know, you've got to like look at the wheels for well-being stuff and really respond to this. But it's just this overall, the street environment's going to be great, not particularly great for anybody with accessibility needs. And it should be routinely picked up and pointed out as a safety risk time and time and time again. And I can't remember the last time I saw anybody do that. I know they're supposed to keep within the confines of the scheme, but it's going to have a direct impact on the success of that scheme. So think about that. Guardrail. I've used some of Kate's stuff here because it's absolutely right. And back in an early consultancy I worked in, we worked on removing all the guardrail from London. So it's a big one. And I still, like, when we were doing the visualizations in Greater Manchester, the first set come through and he put guardrail on over everything. I was like, what's going on? Oh, that's right. You haven't been through the last 15 years of pain we've had in London. You still think guardrail's safe. I go, let me show you this report here that shows when you remove guardrail, there's a 40% drop in collisions. What do you think about that? It's unsafe. So anyway, let's read this comment. Due to the close proximity of the public house and provision of outdoor seating, heaven forbid, it is suggested that pedestrians stroke patrons would be suitably protected if guardrail is provided. Like Kate's given me a great running commentary of the kind of faces I make as well when I see this. That's just not right. How are you supposed to do any kind of like decent regen, nice game if you're working to get, anytime someone's out on the street just relaxing, well, you're going to have to guard them then. They're a danger. Yeah, ridiculous stuff. And I still see it happening, like I say, only today, only a couple of hours ago, which is why I'm still red raw with it. It's like, put the guardrail in there, guard the people around there, make sure that they don't cross there. And it's this whole thing, you can cross the road wherever you like in the UK unless you're banned there. So why are we forcing people into certain sections? Right. Another one, like Operation Ironworks I've been running on my own for the last 15 years, ever since I did that in that bike, and this is me recreating it. It was in the London Cycling Design Standards, this picture. It was basically, I was turning a corner in the wet, turning into a side street off Liverpool Street in Islington, segregated, wedged my Brompton wheel in and was thrown over the top of my bike, front flipped onto the opposite side of the road. Landed, jumped up, went, how's that? Didn't have a scratch on me, but it could have been so much worse. It took me and another guy that stopped to help me like a couple of minutes to pull the bike out of that. I was going, this is ridiculous. And if you look at the collisions, there's quite a few involved in like non-cycle friendly gullies. There's no reason for the gullies to be aligned like that. There's no reason for them to have the long strips. I've been trying to persuade Ealing to replace all those on Uxbridge Road, and I'm hoping they do. But one of the great things we could do to reduce collisions is just take all these non-cycle friendly gullies out there. Let's get cracking on with that. Lots of good tread ones. You can use the iron as well. We might need it. So yeah, gully grate alignment's only really considered with cycle lanes when it comes to road safety audits. Why? Does that mean there's no cyclists on any other types of road? Of course there are. It should always be picked up. It never is, and it's a killer. Yeah, like a reference to report that I really liked back in the day. I think there was some great recommendations in this. I'm sure Bob remembers this one. Just like, again, it's that assumption of car dominance. So it's got some really great recommendations in this report, and I'll put one of them in there. So this is not from a road safety audit. It's from this, this review of road safety audit practice. So exclude from the text any presumption that users accept that they are inherently vulnerable. This should not be assumed before a road safety audit. So that's one of the issues with being called vulnerable. Well, you're vulnerable. What are you doing out of the house? You know, you're in a dangerous situation and you go, I'm sorry, no, I'm not vulnerable. You're being unsafe. You know, you're the one who's being dangerous here. It's kind of like the equivalent in my head. I think if someone's running through a shopping centre swinging a samurai sword, it's not on you to get out of the way. It's on them to stop swinging that sword because it's bloody dangerous. So let's stop those assumptions. I'll keep going. Yeah, the risk of shunts, again, I mentioned it before, but it comes up so often. So this could result in an increased risk of vehicles braking to avoid pedestrians, resulting in a higher incidence of shunts. Just absolutely flabbergasting, absolutely flabbergasting. Of course you've got to brake if there's a pedestrian crossing the road. You're not entitled to run them over, even if braking might result in a shunt. So it's all like this whole, like, why are people crossing the road there? How could it be shunt? And I've shown that along the thinking distance, the braking distance. Stopping sight distances is one that drivers just seem to get away with. It's just not enforced whatsoever. And we'll come back to the unenforced rules of the road in a minute. Here's another one. Following the footways being built out, oh, who could do such a thing, on X Street will be reduced to a single lane in width through the junction area. This raises the concern that opposing vehicles on Y Street may be at increased risk of colliding head-on in the junction as they enter X Street. Now, Kate will tell me how many head-on collisions we have in the UK. It's hardly any, quite a lot of India, but then, you know, it's in the hands of their gods whether they survive. In the UK, where we're not of that persuasion, if you see another car coming straight towards you, you're probably going to stop and slow down. You might get annoyed, but you're probably not going to drive straight into them. So there's this risk of slowing down, I call it, that there's pedestrians out there, that someone's done some obvious traffic calming facility to actually slow you down and you're ignoring it. And someone's thought that's a risk, forgetting the overall safety benefits of it. Okay. Priority at side roads. I've referenced this alongside the new LTN 120 and the diagrams in there. And let's have a read at this. This is a relatively recent comment as well. The audit team recommend that the giveaway markings are removed from all the proposals on the approaches to all of the raised tables. This will mean that both the cyclists and vehicles should slow down and be prepared to give way, thus reducing the risk of serious collisions. So let's unpack that. Removing a give way will ensure that people give way. That's basically what that comment says from a very real new audit. And I just thought I'd show that against LTM 120, where you can see there's giveaways set back on every single one of those examples. before the junctions. So it's a bit like the Urban Design Group and Institute of Civil Engineering just put out a paper just telling engineers you have to be up to date with local standards, with national standards, and when they change, any engineer or any road safety order that isn't familiar with LTM 120 needs retraining. You shouldn't be in the industry. You have to keep up with it, or you're no longer an engineer. Right, white lines. It's I'm really just mentioning this as like just a general beef of mine, because there's often like comments on white lines in it. And really, I'm just showing the TfL research, even on the red routes, on their trunk roads, when he took out centre lines and resurfaced, they still had drops in speed. It's great. So again, like comments what we see about introducing white lines. I couldn't find a specific road safety audit example there, but I'm sure Kate has some. Tracking. Here we go. Here's another car perspective one. So the problem, what's the problem? The proposed planters, very topical, associated with the southbound contraflow cycle lane appear to make the left turn into X Street from Y Road more difficult than it currently is. Now, it doesn't say you can't do it. It just says it's more difficult. What did he mean by difficult? It means having to slow down and think about turning, which would be the entire reason that that bloody planter was put there in the first place. What's the recommendation? Carry out a swept path analysis to ensure that the left turn maneuver can be carried out without undue difficulty by any vehicle reasonably expected to require to do so. Now this is the killer. This is how we've got wide radiuses on our side roads. These comments like that. Well, you should be expected to just turn in at any speed you want without any difficulty. Get the pedestrians out of the way, keep it nice and wide. And I referenced that, and you could look at manual for streets as well, like track round into the opposing lane, do it slowly, keep everything tight, all this stuff that's out there in national standards that's being routinely ignored. Carry on, Brian. What else is being routinely ignored? Yes, this one from the RAC really particularly got my goat. Highway code rules that you shouldn't ignore, implying that the ones that you can ignore, just like it's so inbred this. It's so like right across and go, oh yeah, which ones do I have to watch out for? Yeah, I know I can do 90 on a motorway, and I know I can do 35 because they'll really only clock me if I do 12% over there. So everybody's having these debates as they're going around, like rules is rules. And really the comment I want to make there is the street should infer the behaviour. If drivers are looking for signs and how they can kind of cheat the system, that's a kind of failure in the design of the street. And maybe you need to think about like further restrictions. And my little quote there at the top, like take the highway as you find it, is when Professor John Parkin was training me. So that's the only real rule of the road, Brian. And that's really what we've got drivers to do. If they're looking at signs and interpreting and go, that one can be ignored and they're going through fast, that's a problem. You've got to look at the situation. You've got to pay attention. People are going to be crossing the road. Kids are going to be there. Cyclists are going to be there. Other cars. That's what we need drivers to get into. And I'd like to see that kind of mentality creep into road safety audits somewhat. A little bit about risk now. Yeah, here we go. Let's read this one. With the existing roundabout layout, heavy vehicles tend to take a straight path through the junction, overrunning the central roundel marking, which is against the law. Just thought I'd throw that one in there. Reducing the entry carriageway width together with the doming of the central roundel will change vehicles' paths through the junction, which is what you want to do because it's a roundabout, and could result in large vehicles squeezing cyclists. Hold on now, slowing them down, making them turn. Like there's a whole implication there that cyclists have to be on that near side, which is not how you're going to survive any roundabout in the UK that's done to UK geometry. So let's have a look at what they recommend. As a minimum measure, amend the layout, and this is an instruction. This is a bloody instruction. As a minimum measure, amend the layout to provide a marked cycle lane on the X Street approaches to increase the awareness of drivers to the presence of cyclists. Okay, so that is an instruction to put a cycle lane in on the approach to a major roundabout, knowing that we've tried that, the York Magic roundabout, annular cycle lanes, vehicles swinging off quickly. No, that is the last place you want to find yourself as a cyclist, and someone's suggesting that goes in there. So they're suggesting the lanes are widened and there's a cycle lane put in, and it's done as an instruction, and it's massively against all standards in the world that you'd expect to be safe for cyclists. It's been said, okay, just a little bit of a comment that I said the other week, and there's like that text on the right, which I'm not expecting you to read now, but it's kind of like a kind of rules of engineering, a little bit tongue-in-cheek, and that kind of comment from engineers that, you know, perfection doesn't exist. You're trying to balance all needs of everybody, and really the auditor's job really, you know, it's about trying to ensure that quality. But if they're only looking for the drivers and making sure you get this perfect situation for them, then it's a problem for all those other needs that you're balancing as an engineer. So yeah, that's why I was advised by the old timers, stop doing this road safety audit. Like, you'll never be able to design. It'll just lead you towards you know, a certain car-centric view. Couple more. The artist must educate the critic. I'm a huge Oscar Wilde fan. If nobody was ever expected to know that, but let's read this one. There are no signs or tactile paving to identify shared cycle pedestrian use on the north side of the crossing or on the west side of X Road. This will, now it will, increase the risk of potential pedestrian cycle conflicts. Now, where is the evidence for that? That tactile will increase conflict for pedestrians and cyclists in a shared area. And I've shown a bit from a TRL research on tactile pavements. And if you read through that kind of third column along, so like visually impaired people are expecting steps if they come across corduroy. They're not expecting it to be a shared use. And then what would they do differently on one side or the other? The fact that you put a sign in there and corduroy is really to tell the cyclists, hey, you're no longer legally allowed to ride on this. So using a tactile paving to give information to a cyclist who's probably like able to see it and react to it. And for me, that's a fundamental flaw with it. Fundamental flaw with the use of tactile. But in this case, this road safety audit is confusing a standard detail from some guidance with a safety risk. That's a fundamental issue with that road safety auditor's approach. Here we go. Like the bane of my life, the standard lane width, the 3.65 near side. Like, where do you position yourself as a cyclist? Where do you position yourself as a driver? Let's have a look. Oh yeah, this is like a comment from the Birmingham cycle campaign. I think I have a better one than this. Yeah, I think I've got I'll do this on the other one, but yeah, I will show an example because yeah, I often get there's a comment in here about narrow lanes, so I'll refer to that one. Anyway, carry on, Brian. Yeah, like problem, the reduction in lanes may reduce capacity and introduce congestion problems, leading to driver frustration. Now, this is another one that I see more times than not, the fear of frustrating drivers. Oh my God, if you frustrate them, they'll become so dangerous, they'll just run people over. It's the sort of thing that means oh, well, we can't put that crossing in. Even had it, I won't say the area, but I had it recently, by stipulating that crossing should be every 150 meters, 200 meters in urban areas. You've got to give people regular times to cross. And then someone said, yeah, but that'll slow cars down and that'll have a network impact. And I go, yeah, but how do you cross the road? We were talking 6-lane road we were talking about here. So you've got to regularly stop it or people can't cross it. They go, but that'll have a network impact. Oh, get out of it. And there's a road safety audit comment justifying that kind of network approach. Driver frustration. I mean, the sign of a successful scheme is if a driver's frustrated, then he might consider walking, cycling, or getting the bus. And really, it should be frustrating because it's massively polluting, massively dangerous, and has all these knock-on impacts for society. We only want people that's an essential journey to do it, and then we can take care of them. Anyway, let's give it. Yeah, here's the DMRB bit that I wanted to reference. So there's a design that would absolutely fly through a road safety audit. It's in the design manual for roads and bridges. Good luck crossing that. There's no footways, there's no islands, no ped stuff. That is a standard detail in the UK. So let's have a look at a genuine problem. At various locations, the introduction of a segregated cycle lane will result in a narrow carriageway in the range of 3.25 to 3.9. Now, anybody that thinks 3.9 is a narrow lane, has somewhat of a problem, I would suggest there. That's someone who's been trained in DMRB, gone narrow. 3.25 is our standard lane width, and you can get buses both ways in that. That's the start of their narrow range, 2.5. Now, I'll give you, that's quite narrow. I'll start thinking about it. If there's buses, you know, 3 is really starting to push it. 3.9 narrow, get out of my face. It's a real comment. And the kind of like, the big finale one really is designing for kids. We had like Lucy Marstrand talking about it like a few weeks ago, and it's probably a few months ago now. Where has time gone? But really, like, it's that fundamental issue. Like, here's like a paper, like medical information on this, and it's never picked up. Like, if you're going down a residential street and there's a 30-mile-an-hour limit now, what would you get on a residential street? Would you expect a child to cross the road? I'd like to think a road safety auditor would expect that that might happen. Now, children have like a, I'm going to call it a defect to grow into, but they've got a really narrow depth of focus that widens as you get older. Which means when they're looking down the street, they've got like a small distance that the cars go, and it's really hard to determine approach speeds. And there's so many papers on this one saying that they can't discern the difference between a 40-mile-an-hour approach speed and a 20-mile-an-hour approach speed. Now, one's got a 90% chance of killing them, and one's got a 10% chance of killing them. I'm not sure I've got those stats right, but it's that order of magnitude difference. So for me, if you're expecting a child to cross the road, pick up the risk of high speeds. And in this case, 30 miles an hour would be a high speed for a residential area. All our road safety auditors, when they see a 30-mile-an-hour design speed on a residential street, should be picking up how can kids cross the road independently. They can't perceive it. There's all the medical information, all the evidence that you'd possibly need to say that, but it's never picked up as a risk. Why? And I'll finish, because I've been going on a bit, but you've been good at allowing me to rant. Just on this quote, yeah, this must never happen again. So that's the coroner in 1896 after the first road death. And we're 25 million deaths later. 25 million. And what were the stats? I was looking them up this year. Like 1,784 people killed in 2018. That was the latest stat I was looking at. It's pretty phenomenal. So we'll kind of leave it there. Let's have a little bit of a discussion. So I've run over my time a bit. Let's stop that. There we go. Comments, questions. Kate, did I wind you up enough? I know we're in the same like camp on this one. It's so frustrating, particularly when I got one today that just seemed to have not adopted any best practice in the area. And it's almost like designers. Yeah, designers are giving me going, what are we supposed to do? This goes against everything that you advise. And I'm like, oh, who's done it? Why?
And any problem that doesn't have a justified collision type with some substantiation needs to be sent back, marked 1 out of 10, see me, send this back when it complies to the standard. We just need to push that back. The auditors who don't understand the standard need to go back and start again. And too many people do that. I totally agree with you.
Yeah, this is from a very renowned company as well. And so, yeah. It happens. Yeah, I mean, that was certainly like TMS trained me back in the day, and they definitely made me watch out for stuff like that. So I'm kind of thinking, who trained these people? Right, has anybody got any comments that they want to share? Like any questions? And Kate's back on for part 2, so she can answer questions that we left off from last week as well. It was brilliant, by the way, Kate. I just wanted to do the how it's all going wrong talk.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are good ones.
It's good, but imperfect.
Albeit on that same audit, there was a really good comment about like blister tactile being aligned so it would send people into the road rather than the line straight across. So, I mean, they were picking up on nuanced stuff about visually impaired people, but there was still, yeah. But the response was not change the tactile. The response was put guardrail in.
That's lack of CPD. That is, you know, if auditors don't understand that guardrail has no value in almost every single location, they need to go back and start learning again. We've known this almost 10 years, more than 10 years. We started doing guardrail assessment for you before we left Bedford. This is 12 years ago. We've known it doesn't work for 12 years at least.
Yeah, well, I started working on it in, what would that have been? 2003, 2004. We started doing it in the consultancy I was at. TfL asked us to look for it. And then the only real justification we had for keeping it was at the bottom of hills where the schools or like if there was a massive double curb drop, those kind of instances. But really, not many else. And cycle parking as well was the other use. Anybody got any comments? I can't see hands up, but feel free to jump in. Go on, Bob. Of course.
Okay, thanks a lot, Brian. Yes, very good. On all these things, the concept you would need to know about is risk compensation. And, excuse me, it's in my book. And read John Adams's work. And a number of things we've been talking about are all about risk compensation. Pedestrian guard railing, removing white lines, or I've done narrowing of hatching. There it is. There's the book. And it's all about how there is a constant and persistent adaptation. Now, what you've got with pedestrian guardrail removal is motorists become more aware of people wanting to cross the road. They may slow down, may watch out for them more. It's all about that constant, persistent adaptation to your perception of risk. Kate last time talked about good confusion. It's that situation where you're not completely out of your depth and just think, oh God, I'm just going to run across the road or accelerate or whatever. It's where you're thinking, I'm not quite sure what I've got to do. I've got to watch out a bit more. I've got to be a bit more careful. That's the kind of thing we're after, and we're after it for people walking and cycling. And, you know, we need to think about this throughout. We need to be thinking about, with congestion, what happens in congested circumstances. People watch out more because they've got to watch out more. They slow down more. So when there is all this stuff about how, all this more congestion, isn't it terrible, everybody's going to die? Yes, there are problems for necessary vehicles, emergency vehicles. There may be worse air quality, but you've got the reduction in speed that can be very good for people walking and cycling. So it's this way of questioning what engineers have been doing, because you're bringing in how human beings react to their perception of risk and what they have to do. So, plug for me, and that's that. Okay.
Cheers, Bob. Yeah, Dave, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I've got a hand up there. Pick up from what Bob says. Does everybody understand the term DKE, Developed Kinetic Envelope?
Well, I do, but yeah, by all means, explain it and make a point. Yep.
Basically, there's a book we were using, which was produced in Germany about 40 years ago. A very good diagram shows that you can narrow the lane widths down as you reduce the speed. I proved this about 30 years ago, but I got pulled up by the police for it. Is that motorists tend to notice cyclists if there's a risk of damaging their vehicle. If you wear your bicycle lock-up chain like a bandolier and leave the loose end hanging down by the right-hand side, and then you pick up that and swirl it around in your right hand when anybody's coming near you on a car, then immediately move into the next lane. It's the perception.
You're also about 6'5", Dave, as well. I've got to add that one in.
It's the twirling piece of chain or the pickaxe that you have slung across your rear rack with the pickaxe head sticking out into the traffic side. But it makes you very noticeable. Lane widths is very critical here. I think we are far too generous with lane widths in 20-mile-an-hour zones. The maximum width for a vehicle without a special traffic order is 2.55 metres, and that makes it about 2.8 metres over the mirrors. So if you have a 3-metre wide lane, and quite a lot of streets in London are 6 metres wide, so you have a 2-lane carriageway where you centre line, so each side is 3 metres. You can just about get along there very carefully with a truck or a bus. And that tends to keep their speeds down in sort of 15, 20-mile-an-hour basis. And I think we've got some roads where we have 3.94 metre traffic lanes. People hear along those at 40, 50 miles an hour because they don't see any risk of damaging their vehicle. And by narrowing down that perception of traffic lane width, we start to make people think, oh, I might bump into something. I have to slow down. So that's that one. And guard railing, is there 40 or 50 people a year killed by drivers making an excursion onto the footway? Buildings are damaged, etc. I put in some curb, and there's a debate on this. It's about 15 to 18 inches high, but it bounces HGVs back into the road if they actually make an excursion to go onto the footway. Should we be considering not putting guardrailing up or even Armco barriers which get knocked over, but actually designing curbing that prevents vehicles or motor vehicles making excursions onto footways?
Yeah, I think you've mentioned this one before, David, and I was just as horrified then as now about, like, well, it's more like just pedestrians crossing. You don't want to have to leap and twist your arm, but it's a context thing, like all things around a bend, narrow footway, perhaps.
You can lower it where pedestrians are going to cross. You can have drop curbs, but at places
how
like,
do you know where they're going to cross, Dave? How do you know?
Well, that's a mix of, do you really want guardrailing? You can still climb over them if you want to determinedly cross at a point, but who wants to cross from the apex of a bend or a corner?
Yeah, well, you can cross wherever you want. Like this is like it's a context thing, but like yeah, and this is the engineering. You go, well, yeah, who would cross there? We wouldn't. Well, when I'm walking around, like go for a walk with John Dales is what I'd always recommend. As I call him, John Desire Line Dales, completely opens my mind. I'm going off to the crossing perpendicular, going, because obviously that's the way good engineers cross the road. He's off walking diagonally across the junction, and I'm going, John, what are you doing? And then I'm having to run round to catch up with him because he's obviously gone the quickest way. So you know, John's a transport expert as well, but people will cross where they cross them, and we have to make it safe for when they do that. So I'm worried about full height curbs, particularly type you're talking about, dual height.
I see the comment about high curbs. These are not vertical high curbs. These are a bit like sea walls designed to take people back. So you won't hit pedals on them, but they're designed to deflect things back.
They cause overturning, Dave.
I've seen these create a dreadful environment for cyclists on busy roads. I mean, it depends what type of street you're trying to create, doesn't it? And what the function of the street is supposed to be. And this is the thing I always come back to. If you want a road to be a real through road, then you keep other stuff off it, other than the fast motor traffic that's supposed to be there. If you're creating a town centre space, obviously it's a completely different approach. So I think you can't have these universal rules. You have to consider the context of the space you're trying to create. One thing I'd like to say is that I was quite critical on Twitter about I was questioning some of what Kate said last week on Twitter, and it generated quite a lot of correspondence. And I didn't mean to be, you know, to be. I was just being a bit devil's advocate.
Nothing wrong with that, David.
And I thought it generated some interesting correspondence. And Kate came up with this thing where she said, well, it's a bit like a doctor and a pharmacist. The doctor might not give you the treatment that you want, but the pharmacist, i.e. the safety auditor, is there to ensure that it's done, that the drug is correct, that it's done, what is dispensed is what the doctor ordered, although they're not going to correct for the initial failing of the doctor in giving you just a palliative treatment instead of actually treating you, which I can understand. But I think some of the problem with safety auditing in this country is the mystique around it. It's the awe with which the audit is regarded. And this word safety, it has a very high position in British people's or English speaking people's perception of what's important. Safety is really important. And the trouble with the safety audit, I think, of some of those that I've seen, is that their opinions. So it's okay to have another person's opinion on what is the appropriate design here. But having this word safety attached to it, it's like it's the final court of appeal. It's like nobody dares to question. Oh, the safety audit says this. It's like it's a final. It's like there's no appeal against it. So maybe we should call it something else, not safety, but it's just another opinion, another professional opinion. But I think it's this putting it on too much of a pedestal that
Yeah,
can.
from the designer's perspective, safety audit, there's safety audit and quality audit, i.e. quality control, not as in place audit, and technical audit. So in a designer's context, it means something specific, which is helpful. I think it's seen by other people as meaning something different, and I agree with you. I think maybe we need a new name for it. Like we were talking about mortality, morbidity, maybe we need, you know, a different term that integrates other benefits, because they're just not considered. I totally agree with you.
Kate, we invert it. We call it risk management, because risk is removal of hazard. Without hazard, when you remove the hazard, you make something safe. So I much prefer the term risk management rather than safety management, because you start at the opposite end of the spectrum. 100% risk removal is 100% safe, and then you move down through the risk levels in the hierarchy until you then say the ultimate failure in risk management is when you tell people to put PPE on. So in other words, if
last resort, totally agree.
Put on PPE, then you've completely failed in managing the risk.
Hello.
And then,
Ruth, please come in. Yeah.
Sorry. Two things. We don't ever talk about rural roads here, and if you're cycling on a rural road which is very narrow, the idea that anyone stops from overtaking because they're frightened of what's coming ahead is zero these days. They just overtake on a blind bend and expect the oncoming driver to go into the ditch. That's number one. Number two is, if we were really serious about safety audits, every time there's a crash, there would be the equivalent of a health and safety audit as there is in a factory. And it seems to me that every time there is a crash in, I'm London, but anywhere else, there needs to be health and safety executive, much as we might not like them for nitpicky things. But so many roads are designed. There's one particular one I know in Twickenham, Teddington, where as you approach a roundabout, the cycle lane just disappears. So it's got complicated, so they just give up. So that should never have passed any kind of safety thing. No mother and child uses it, therefore no one uses it. Therefore, as I said, Kate, there are no crashes because it's not used.
Yes.
Those of us who use it know what we're doing and we take the lane and blah, blah, blah. So safety really is important, but we need to have proper health and safety. Every time there's a crash, there has to be the health and safety executive, because the roads belong to the council, TfL, DFT. And that has to happen.
Yeah, when HSE were created, there's one magical, famous bit of paper in 1976 that was produced that said essentially they didn't have to investigate road traffic collisions, even those driving for work. And there are a lot of us trying to overturn that. I'm part of the Transport Safety Commission, and we had an investigation into fatalities, and we said essentially exactly what you're saying. We should have a proper investigation. We don't get one, even driving for work, which is about a third of all deaths. Definitely agree. We need a proper investigation.
Can I use the famous Section 39? I mean, there is actually a mandate for all local roads authorities to carry out investigations into crashes. There is no directive from the DFT to tell them how to do it, but it's more like marking your own homework, because Section 39 not only tells them to investigate crashes, but then tells them to use the investigations of crashes to tell themselves what to do to make the road safe, which should be, if you think about how all other transport is organised, you have the rail accident, the air accident, and the marine accident investigation branches, which their sole purpose is to have experts who know how to investigate crashes, produce reports that tell you what caused the crashes, and then they hand those reports to a regulator. The regulator, ORR, CAA, etc. The regulator then sees, oh, there's this report. In order to make the operation safer, we must take these recommendations from the investigator and tell the operators that we expect them to regulate their operation that way. But it's all contained within Section 39 with no requirement to make it public. And we've had a little bit of a campaign on you go to your local authority and say, what Section 39 reports have you done into crashes recently? And you'll find that there's a real paucity. There's no qualified staff. I mean, AIB, RAIB, they have to have qualified investigators. The roads authority can just send anybody part-time out of the office to write something up, and nothing happens because nobody sees it, because it's not published. So Ruth, you've got a job on. Section 39 needs a statutory instrument or some secondary legislation there.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that from my perspective, Oh, getting a bit echoey there. Yeah, from my perspective, I quite like them being there, and I don't even mind them being called road safety, because I think that resonates as well. I just want them to be done properly. It's a bit like the conversation we're having on like economic appraisal. I love economic appraisal. Just do the maths properly. You know, get more variables in. So that's what it comes down to. It's learn the rules, see what the latest standards is. I mean, I'm lucky enough to write a lot of guidance, and we don't write for fun. We write because we want people to look at it and bring it into their practice. And it's really infuriating when they don't. So for me, I've tried to get in. I was quite critical today, but because I want these things to change, and I think it's a good process. And Kate clearly thinks the same thing. So hopefully we can. Or maybe we're just shouting at the screen. Does anybody?
Ryan, can I come in there? Shane for one.
Yeah, go on, Shane.
But that's the thing that should be ringing alarm bells for people here is you're the guy that writes the guidance. And the road safety auditor must know that you're involved in some of these schemes. Yeah. And they're still coming back to you with these observations. So they're not even taking that on board, that they're dealing with somebody who is an actual guide, someone who produces design guidance. And they're still coming out with stuff that is indefensible, really. And so there's like, and whatever chance about you defending your designs against these guys, you know, some kid who's just out of college a couple of years, who's been handed the cycle lanes to do in this particular project, how is he going to turn around, or she going to turn around and say no to a bunch of road safety auditors? Like there's if you were getting this treatment from the process, then there's something fundamentally wrong with the process. If someone like you is getting that treatment from the process.
Yeah, well, I know when I've commissioned them in the past, I would never just send. I was a design engineer at Camden for years, and if I sent a design over, I would never just send a design. I would send correspondence about it. I would send the guidance I was looking at. I would send research about why we're doing this there, and I'd send like the objectives for the brief, and then at least they're fighting against something, not just gone blank. Oh, this is another one of them. I think, you know, there is like an onus on the designer to. You know, that's why I had that artist must educate critic kind of thing. You've got to tell them how to judge you and why you're doing it and what context it's in. And I think that can only get a better audit. But yeah, no, it's infuriating. I get people coming to me and saying, "Oh, look, here's the audit. Totally contradicts everything you've been saying and in the training. Who's wrong here?" And like I go, well, here's all the evidence back up why that's written in this guidance at the national, regional, local levels that we put it out. Where's their evidence? But still, even then, like the engineers are going, there is, like as David Arditi said, that kind of like that kudos of the road safety audit. But yeah, we don't want to go against a road safety audit because everybody pictures themselves in a court of law having to defend why something happened. But yeah, it's tricky, and I'm not necessarily saying we've got the answers, but we've got to keep trying, and we're trying to point out issues. And Kate is in a position where she can affect what road safety auditors do. And what I do, and the reason I first did this talk, was deliver it to a whole bunch of road safety auditors and police officers and saying, why aren't you watching this? Why are these things going wrong? And it did make them think and like change practice. So I like to think we are addressing it, and hopefully a few people will see this and last week's one and go, okay, that's quite an interesting way of looking at our subject area. So you just got to keep calling BS when you see it. If it doesn't feel right, it's probably not. And you know, don't take it as the law. It's an audit, and you can do a designer's response. Just make sure you have the evidence on your side. I don't know whether Kate, you wanted to come with any last words. We're running a little bit over, but
yeah, I sometimes as an auditor, I almost incite the designer to come back and, you know, and challenge something. And now sometimes we have to flag something, you know, like I was saying last week, if you've got a brief that just says, we're just doing this, and there's no substantiation, there's no explanation, it's very innovative, there's no thinking. Sometimes what we'll put in the report is, it's unclear how this is intended to work and whether it will be a good compromise or a bad compromise. And you hand it over with one hand, while at the same time saying, if you can substantiate it, we'd really like to support this. Yeah, at the minute, the audit process doesn't, the big thing for me, it doesn't include mortality, morbidity, benefits of active travel. That's a massive deficit for me. And too many auditors don't keep up to date with changing understandings about psychology. That's why I did a degree in psychology for exactly that, understanding how people behave, about risk compensation, about, you know, perception and so on. You know, too many people don't have enough, you know, training, and I'm not ashamed to poke an auditor with a stick. And if anyone has a problem with an audit, I'm very happy to be a go-between, and I very often do that. I've quite often been involved where CIHT have been invited by the public to strike road safety auditors off the register due to incompetence, and we drill into, you know, their competence and what they've done. It's necessary.